Watching two well-known, high-level fighters compete in the cage is what most MMA fans long for. That said, anticipation is always heightened when there's genuine animosity between the fighters who are about to go toe-to-toe. It's true, great rivalries are what legendary careers are often built from. Still, while a heated feud generally helps sell pay-per-views, it doesn't guarantee the contest itself will be competitive. In fact, as we're about to see, some of the most talked about rivalries have produced incredibly one-sided fights. As always, if you guys enjoy this video, then please be sure to let me know by leaving a like and subscribing to our channel. Now, without further ado, and ranked in no particular order, let's take a look at 10 heated rivalries that produced one-sided fights. Number 10. Nick Diaz vs. George St-Pierre. The rivalry between George "Rush" St-Pierre and Nick Diaz pitted the UFC's clean-cut marquee star against one of MMA's most outspoken bad boys. Things got a bit tense when Diaz accused the future Hall of Famer of being pampered and even taking steroids leading up to the contest. Of course, at the UFC 158 press conference, the former Strikeforce champ famously popularized the phrase "wolf tickets," which he accused both Dana White and St-Pierre of selling. Thanks to the tension and good promotion, UFC 158 was a box office success, selling 950,000 pay-per-views. Sadly, the main event delivered little excitement and was all St-Pierre, who seemingly took his opponent down at will. It soon became apparent that Diaz had no answer for the French-Canadian's high-level grappling. In the end, Rush coasted to a unanimous decision victory to retain his welterweight crown. Number 9. Kamaru Usman vs. Jorge Masvidal. At a Super Bowl media event in 2020, the feud between Jorge "Gamebred" Masvidal and the Nigerian nightmare Kamaru Usman began. That day, the two welterweights exchanged some heated words and had to be separated by security. Gamebred would continue to insult the champ until he finally received a short-notice title shot at UFC 251. The Fight Island card was seen by over 1.3 million viewers, but the main event was far less competitive than fans had hoped. While Masvidal managed to go the distance, Usman controlled the fight with his grappling, leaving no doubt who the victor was when the contest concluded. Due to his massive popularity and the fact that he took the first fight without benefiting from an entire training camp, the BMF champ got another crack at the welterweight champ. Unfortunately, the second fight was even less competitive than the first. At UFC 261, Usman put their rivalry to an abrupt end early in the second round with a massive right hand that put Gamebred completely out cold. Number 8. Conor McGregor vs. Jose Aldo. The notorious Conor McGregor is a fighter who knows a thing or two about getting under his opponent's skin. The Irishman waged some of his best mental warfare heading into his UFC 194 bout with longtime UFC featherweight champion Jose Aldo. McGregor did everything from tearing up a photo of the champ and putting it in his mouth to snatching his title at a press conference. For months, whenever the two were near each other, the Dublin native never missed an opportunity to taunt the Brazilian striker. McGregor's antics had helped generate tremendous interest in the fight. A whopping 1.2 million viewers tuned in to see these rivals settle their differences inside the cage at UFC 194. Of course, the fight itself lasted just 13 seconds when McGregor landed a well-timed left hook. It would be the first, and thus far only meeting between the two featherweight greats. Number 7. Anderson Silva vs. Vitor Belfort. Despite their shared Brazilian heritage, Vitor the Phenom Belfort and Anderson the Spider Silva weren't exactly on the best terms heading into their showdown at UFC 126. Prior to the fight, Belfort suggested that his opponent was putting on a facade for the public and in the cage. More specifically, the Phenom accused Silva of trying to wear a mask. In response, the Spider showed up to the weigh-ins wearing an actual mask. After the two stepped off the scales, they would take part in an intense stare-down in which the tension was very apparent. Still, despite their dislike for one another, the fight wasn't particularly close. In fact, Belfort would end up earning a permanent spot in his opponent's highlight reel after being hit with a brutal front kick that led to a first-round TKO. When it was all said and done, their UFC 126 contest lasted just 3 minutes and 25 seconds. Number 6. Chael Sonnen vs. Wanderlei Silva. Over the years, several heated moments on the Ultimate Fighter reality series have nearly led to an altercation. That said, when Wanderlei Silva and Chael Sonnen coached opposite one another on the Ultimate Fighter Brazil 3, things got very physical. After the two exchanged words, the axe murderer was getting a little too close for Sonnen's liking, which prompted him to shove the former Pride star. The shove soon escalated into a full-blown brawl that would go down as one of the series' most memorable moments. Despite the melee, due to drug testing issues involving both athletes, the two never fought in the UFC. However, roughly 3 years after their coaching stint, they would meet at Bellator 180 in 2017. In the opening round, Sonnen shot in for a quick takedown and began to batter the Brazilian on the ground. While Silva did manage to land a big right hand that briefly stunned his opponent, for the most part, Sonnen was able to take his opponent down at will and coast his way to a dominant decision victory. It would be an anticlimactic ending to one of the sport's most intense feuds. Number 5. Ronda Rousey vs. Miesha Tate. Back in their Strikeforce days, Miesha Tate and Ronda Rousey engaged in a war of words that would lay the groundwork for one of the most high-profile feuds in women's MMA. The animosity would continue to build at the Strikeforce weigh-ins when Tate got in her opponent's face and was met with a shove. UFC fans were introduced to the budding rivalry when they became opposing coaches on the 18th season of The Ultimate Fighter. During the show, the two rarely missed an opportunity to send a verbal jab in the other's direction. Surprisingly, the intense shared hatred did not produce fight-of-the-night caliber contests. Rousey won their first meeting with a first-round armbar, breaking Tate's arm in the process. In their second encounter, Tate would become the first woman to make it out of round 1 with her rival at UFC 168. That said, the outcome was never really in doubt, as the former Olympian got the better of most of their exchanges and eventually won via armbar in the third round. The rivalry was significant in that it helped generate interest in women's MMA, but it was also pretty one-sided. Number 4. Rashad Evans vs. Rampage Jackson. The rivalry between Quinton Rampage Jackson and Sugar Rashad Evans began back on June 3rd in 2004. That evening, Jackson was cornering a teammate named Hector Ramirez, who was facing Evans. Evans and Ramirez were competing for a smaller California-based promotion. As Jackson tells it, Ramirez tore a ligament in his ankle and was competing while injured. Evans was able to take over the fight and taunted his wounded opponent on his way to picking up a unanimous decision victory. The display infuriated Jackson, who has despised Evans ever since. This animosity was on full display when both men served as coaches on The Ultimate Fighter, which set the stage for their UFC 114 collision. As the contest went on, it became clear that Evans' speed, footwork, and ability to keep his opponent pressed against the cage would lead him to victory. While Rampage did land a big shot in the third that staggered his opponent, it was Rashad who won the contest via unanimous decision. Number 3. Israel Adesanya vs. Paulo Costa. As reigning middleweight champion Israel Adesanya so eloquently stated, there are certain energies that just don't mix well. Of course, his comment was referring to his long-standing beef with the heavy-handed Brazilian Paulo Costa. While the exact start of the feud is a bit difficult to pinpoint, things got particularly tense at UFC 243 after the last stylebender picked up a knockout win over Robert Whittaker. Following the victory, Adesanya decided to scale the cage and taunt Paulo Costa, who was playing the role of spectator. Things got so heated it appeared the two might slug it out right there and then. Of course, the two had been trash-talking each other for months leading up to that point, with Adesanya repeatedly accusing Costa of being on steroids, and Costa mocking Adesanya's power and thin frame. The animosity would continue to build prior to their eventual showdown at UFC 253. When their middleweight title clash finally went down, it was the champ who ended up backing up his words. Adesanya put on a striking clinic, resulting in a TKO victory in the second round. For his part, Costa blamed the uninspiring performance on the bottle of wine he allegedly consumed a night earlier. Number 2. Tito Ortiz vs. Ken Shamrock. There were few rivalries with as much legitimate hatred between two fighters as Ken Shamrock vs. Tito Ortiz. The origins of the feud can be traced all the way back to UFC 18 in 1999, an event that saw Ortiz defeat a member of Ken Shamrock's Lion's Den, Jerry Bolander. After winning the contest via TKO, the Huntington Beach bad boy lived up to his nickname by shooting air guns at the Lion's Den corner. However, the tension reached a boiling point at UFC 19 when, after defeating another Lion's Den member in Guy Mezger, Ortiz proceeded to flip off his corner and don a t-shirt that directly insulted Mezger. The antics prompted Shamrock to scale the cage and confront Ortiz, with referee John McCarthy having to eventually separate the two. The heated altercation led to their eventual showdown at UFC 40, in what would be the most successful pay-per-view in the promotion's history at that point. While the fight was expected to be close, the Huntington Beach bad boy dominated the contest, prompting the Lion's Den founder's corner to eventually throw in the towel. Their subsequent rematches featured an aging Shamrock suffering back-to-back first-round TKO losses. While the storied rivalry helped build the UFC, the fights themselves were all Ortiz. Number 1. Khabib Nurmagomedov vs. Conor McGregor. If there was ever a rivalry that took things a bit too far, it would be Conor McGregor vs. Khabib Nurmagomedov. The iconic feud went from intense to illegal following the infamous Dolly incident. After Khabib confronted one of the Irishman's teammates, McGregor arrived on the scene seeking vengeance. The Notorious One confronted the Eagle, who was inside a bus with several other UFC stars. McGregor then proceeded to toss a dolly at the bus, breaking glass and injuring multiple fighters in the process. After things died down, an angry Khabib was eager to settle the score with his rival, asking McGregor to simply send his location. That location would be Las Vegas, Nevada, the site of UFC 229. While the Dolly ordeal may have been controversial, it set the stage for the most watched event in UFC history. Approximately 2.4 million fight fans worldwide saw the Eagle use his elite grappling to control his opponent and secure a submission victory in a fight that wasn't particularly close. While there have been more competitive rivalries, few have been quite as memorable. As always, if you guys enjoyed the video, please be sure to let me know by leaving a like and subscribing to our channel. Apart from that, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.